Thank you everyone for being here today and good afternoon and welcome. I'm Julie Chabdi, the Associate Director of the Health and Wellbeing Program with the WorkWell Center and your host for today. Welcome to our last session of the Foundations of Financial Wellness Plan, Save, Grow series sponsored by the Healthy Campus Financial Wellness Subcommittee. Today's session is on AGPS for your financial journey. Throughout today's session, you're welcome to use the chat or the Q&A to ask questions or make comments specific to today's topic. And then we'll have time at the end to answer your questions. And if we don't, we can send that out through email. Please make sure you're muted to minimize any background noise. It's my pleasure to introduce Jana Wong, who is one of our co-leads of the Financial Wellness Subcommittee. Jana, would you like to say a few words?
No, just thank everybody for their hard work planning these, especially Julie, and for all of you who have come to these webinars past February, March, April, and May. We hope they've been helpful, and I'm sure today's won't be any different. So thank you.
And thank you so much, Jana. I'd like to also thank members of our Financial Wellness Subcommittee. Some are here today for their expertise, leadership, and working on this really important topic to bring financial education and literacy to our faculty and staff. And we look forward to bringing you more in the near future. So thank you, everyone. And as always, don't forget to stretch. Feel free to stand up, move anytime that feels best for you. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Melissa Sella, who's Vice President and Financial Advisor from CAPTRUST. Melissa is a financial advisor based in Folsom, California, partnering with individuals, families, and businesses to create personalized financial strategies. Before joining CAPTRUST in 2023, she spent over 15 years in strategic planning and financial analysis in the healthcare sector. Melissa is passionate about guiding clients through every stage of life with reliable, knowledgeable advice. Outside of work, she enjoys tennis, swimming, traveling, and cheering on the Ohio State Buckeyes with her husband, Jeff, and their two sons. Welcome, Melissa, and I'll stop sharing so you can share your slides.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry about the Buckeye thing. I know I'm at USC right now, so maybe I shouldn't have snuck in a little bit about the Buckeyes there, but let me see about sharing my screen.
Secretary, she says secretary, she found that.
Oh, sorry, that's me. I'll shut my audio off.
We don't see your slides, Melissa.
Well, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, let's see. Okay, can you see them now? Are they showing up?
Almost. There
Okay.
we go.
Okay, perfect. Great. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited about our partnership with USC. It's been going on for a long time, and we'll share a little bit about that. So we're advisors for your retirement plan. We've been that for a long time, and now we've just recently added the benefit where you actually have access to us as fiduciary advisors and advisors to you all as participants at USC. And I always feel very fortunate to be in this work and role. As you heard from Julie, I haven't always been working in just the specific individual financial advisory space, but I've actually spent a long time trying to figure out how to make a difference in people's lives, whether it be through healthcare, benefit, et cetera. And it really feels like an excellent space. And I'm very fortunate to work very closely with a lot of individuals and participants to help them achieve their goals. Because it's so personal, right? Everybody's financial journey is very personal. And that's what I think we'll spend some time talking about today. But also a little bit more focused also on the retirement side, just especially being sort of retirement plan advisors to you all. Great. So always starting, CAPTRUST wants me to make sure I make our disclosures. So our legal document here, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a lawyer, we are financial advisors. And at the end of the day, all of this advice actually needs to be very personalized. So I'm going to give you general concepts, general ideas and thinking, and you definitely have the option, through the benefit of USC to schedule individual one-on-one appointments with us to talk through your specific situations. There's no guarantees, nothing about performance, et cetera, in anything that we're doing or talking about. So just some disclosures for us. So today, really, I kind of want to talk through sort of how to be thinking about retirement at even very different phases of your life, right? You can be younger, you can be older. This day and age, retirement is kind of in people's hands. We'll talk about that. We can also talk about a little bit of other goals as well. And so, like, what is that destination? What does that look like? And then how do you actually get there? Um, and how have you been doing to get there? And then kind of putting it all together. And then also spending a little more time sharing about the benefit of having this participant advice through CAPTRUST at work. Okay, so retirement landscape. So I always like to joke back in the day, like um, my grandparents, for example, if they were in the US, they would have probably, been born, went to school, got a job, and then they died when they were like maybe 55 or 60. So there really wasn't really this like retirement planning or retirement picture. Then, like my parents' generation, maybe, and maybe a bit of their parents' generation, the employers kind of took care of the retirement, right? So there were a lot of pension plans in place. There were maybe more fully funded Social Security, et cetera. Retirement is kind of taken care of for people, and individuals didn't really have to be thinking about it. And then, of course, more recently, even sort of a little bit of my parents' generation, and definitely now mine, and for sure my kids, right? It's a situation where we actually really have to be proactive and active in our retirement planning and our future and our financial plan, because much more of it now falls on the individuals. We, of course, have these excellent benefits, like you have through USC, through your, 403Bs and all those pieces that you have access to. And it's really important to take huge advantage of those plans because they're tax advantage plans, but you access them through your employer, they give you matches, etc. But again, it's still very much important for you to be proactive and active in taking steps on that, and make sure that you're making decisions and that you also have adaptability and resilience in that plan. Because again, now it's kind of falling on the individual, right? It's no longer a situation where it's like, hey, my father worked for a university as well. Actually, it was Ohio State, which is why I have this allegiance to Ohio State. Sorry, I know. But anyway, he worked for a university as well. And, back in that time, right, he's a lot older. He worked for 45 years for that employer, and then he's kind of like on a pension plan, right? That's no longer the case. Like those things just don't exist. Also, just it's not sustainable financially for organizations to have that where they take on all the risks for these individuals. And so now really what's happened is because there's been that transition, there's been a lot less taught for individuals to really be thinking about how do I replace my income for retirement? And we're really finding a huge disparity between retirement savings and the need that people have post-retirement for their lifestyles because there hasn't really been enough education or thinking for that insurance of continuing your lifestyle from working into retirement. So you find people potentially working longer. Social Security is also underfunded and it's changed, right? So it used to be full retirement age was 65. Now it's 67. Who knows what might happen to it in the future? I always say it's got to be there in some form, but it probably won't look the same. So again, right, like that's also less of a security there for ongoing income. It's a good and a bad thing. We're living longer, right? Like I said, in that earlier generation, they kind of worked and then they died. And unfortunately, there really wasn't this retirement landscape where people are living into their 80s and 90s and they need to fund those lifestyles. And then on top of that, in the US, we have a challenge related to our healthcare costs, are actually really worldwide, right? Like healthcare is not easy to figure out. Granted, I spent some time in it to figure out how to improve quality of cost and quality and cost. But at the end of the day, it's rising a lot faster than inflation, which we even know today in age, inflation is going up very fast too. And then, of course, there's a lot of economic volatility. So how do you deal with all of these challenges as an individual now, and how do you educate yourself in that? And that's where we're really thrilled to partner. And also we'll continue to talk through that. But this is where I really encourage everybody to, be more proactive in thinking about it. And it's great that you're attending this and have these resources at USC to provide this type of information and education. So in order to figure out what you need to do to be more proactive in your retirement planning or really in any form of goal planning around your finances, right? It's really important to start with like, what are you trying to get to? What do you need? Right? So even if we were talking about like paying for college for your kids, or we're talking about buying another home, still have to start to put some parameters around it, right? Like it's a little easier maybe to think about the parameters around paying for college for your kids in a home because it's much more physical, tangible aspect of like, okay, I want to buy a home. It's $700,000. I need a down payment of $20,000 and my mortgage would be this, right? So you start with the end in mind to figure out how to accomplish it. It is very intimidating, and for many people, intimidating to be thinking about like, okay, well, I want to retire, but like, let's start to try to make that more tangible, right? Like, how much do you need? What is that lifestyle? Where are you going to live? Right? Do you think you'll live in the house you're living in now? Right? Do you think that anything about your lifestyle will change? Right? Like, if you start planning retirement in your 40s, that's your bottom dollar. Your lifestyle in your 40s, when maybe you're raising kids, etc., is not going to be the same as your lifestyle when you're 65. Maybe it is, but very often it's not. So starting to think about it, even in your earlier ages, will help because we're finding that, over 50% of people have no idea what they need to retire comfortably. And they're not really doing anything to make sure that they're not going to run out of money in retirement. And a lot of Americans might not even have 5,000 saved, and some don't have it at all. And that's a really scary place, right? Because no longer, like I just talked about, is anybody else going to take care of them for retirement? And it's going to be really hard to be working full time when you're like 80, 85, right? It's just not an ideal lifestyle like some people do. So again, I think it's really important, and we're here to help. And I know you have lots of resources to think about, okay, like, what do I need? What's my lifestyle now? How might it change? What might it look like in retirement? Of course, it's very hard to envision a lifestyle 25 years out, but you can start thinking about it, right? Thinking about how much you do spend on yourself now, thinking about, is this where I want to live? What are those things? It's never too early to start thinking about that and your financial goals. So that's really where we would want you to start, with the end in mind, right? Knowing that it's always a moving target, life is a journey and things can change and move. But at least if you start with the end in mind and start to picture and envision what that's like, you're able to start taking proactive steps, saving appropriately, seeing if you're on track for that. So once you kind of have that, right, then right, you start with like, okay, I have a vision and a goal for my retirement. Now you have to take like the steps to get there, right? So back to like the example of buying a house. Okay, well, so I need to save $20,000 to buy, a $700,000 home. Okay, great. How am I going to save that? Well, I'm going to put away, I don't know, $1,000 a month in my account, and then I'll be able to buy it in 2 years, right? So there's the similar concepts you need to think about at all the different decades of your life. We're starting with 50s here, right? But you can even go back as 20s and 30s and 40s to be thinking about retirement plan or any other goals you have. And really, the 50s and 60s are your most crucial years, right, for thinking about retirement, because most people, right, are thinking about retirement in their 60s. So you're usually thinking about it around 65, 67 is usually what I see people, because you get access to Medicare at 65, right? And in our country, most of our healthcare benefits are coming through employers. I work with plenty of people who want to retire early. It's just a total different factor that we have to factor in to go directly to marketplaces and buy health insurance on your own, but it can be put in a plan too. So most people are retiring around 65, 67 sometimes, because that's when you hit that full retirement age of Social Security. Meaning if you start taking Social Security at 67 or later, you don't have any issue with like any additional earned income you have of like freezing your Social Security or paying back or things along those lines. So then what are the things you need to do in these decades? So in your 50s, you really want to start thinking very seriously about making sure that you're eliminating any debts. Mostly around more high interest debts, right, etc. Some people want to pay off their homes. I mean, this day and age, the interest rates are a little bit higher, but if you have a 2%, I don't know that I'd worry so much about paying off your loan. But there is an important piece about, eliminating debt. 50s is also when you get access to the catch up in your retirement plan. So you're able to put away, if you're between the ages of 50 and 59, an additional $8,000 in retirement. Now, depending on what you earned the previous year, you might have to put Roth, but some can also be pre-tax depending again on your earnings, because there's been a new stipulation where if you earn more than $150,000 last year, your catch up has to be all Roth. If you're between the ages of 60 and 63, I know I'm kind of jumping to the 60s columns, they've added a super catch up. So instead of just 8,000, you can actually put 11,250 away. Again, same stipulations though this year. If you're a high income earner, it has to be all Roth. This is also when you can start making sure that you have proper estate documents in place, right? You want to make sure that in the case that anything happens to you, like those things are in place. Please, I always like to emphasize, review your beneficiaries on all your accounts to make sure that it's going to go to who you'd want it to go to. You can also go on to ssa.gov, which is Social Security, and start getting a statement to see what your Social Security would be at different ages to also factor that in to think about, okay, if I get that from Social Security, then I just need this much to supplement for this lifestyle that I think I need because that's my current lifestyle in retirement. Um, and then the other piece too would be, long-term care insurance and life insurance, right? So if you have loved ones that are still dependent on you, I think you get some benefits of health insurance through the company, which are great, but just making sure that, again, I unfortunately have seen situations where you just need to make sure you have some term life insurance in place or something like that so that people are covered and also considering long-term care. So this day and age, right? Like we're living longer, but sometimes we need a lot more care at those older ages. So 50s is a great time to be assessing that because you're still healthy. It's still reasonably accessible to access, long-term care. So those are some of the things you would be thinking about in your 50s. In your 60s, this is where, it would be really important to start drawing up a detailed retirement plan. We always like to say you want to start detailed retirement planning within 5 years of retirement. It's a benefit. Like again, all this is a benefit through your our CAPTRUST at Work program with you. We can help people draw this up in detail or at a high level to set. But again, I think it's going to be really important to start calculating your income needs, start thinking about your withdrawal strategies, start thinking about, if you have more than you need, which is what I find sometimes, right? Then do you have other goals or do you have plans for charitable giving or estate planning, et cetera, that would all go into sort of that detailed financial planning that would kind of need to be put together, in your 60s or usually at least within 5 years of retirement. And then I love this because we actually have these checklists from like when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and it kind of goes like your 20s checklist is this big, your 30s checklist is like this, your 40s, 50s, it grows and grows. But thankfully, when you hit your 70s, your checklist goes back to short. And I joke we don't really have an 80s because your checklist should be just have fun. But so in your 70s, your checklist is a little lower. But really, at the end of the day, once you're retired or you're in that phase, it should just be like an annual review, check in, like if life has changed, certain things along those lines. But hopefully, a lot of the checklist is getting taken care of ahead of time. So, those are some of the things to be thinking about in the different decades at a very high level. But that's kind of how we start to take it from, okay, you start with envisioning what that lifestyle is going to be like, what that retirement life is going to be like. I know it's hard when you're super young to think about that, but as you get older and older, you probably start to think about it a little bit more. You might even practice retirement, so it starts to become even more real, right? Take a couple weeks off and be like, oh, these are the things that I might do. And then you then can back into, okay, let's actually make a plan for getting there. How much do I need? What are then the action steps I need to take to get there? So once you kind of know that, right, this is a very high level view. Some people who start early, like I always like to joke, Warren Buffett became Warren Buffett because he started investing when he was 14 and he is now, I think, in his 80s, right? So that's a long time of compound interest to get. So if you started, saving for retirement in your 20s, you don't have to save as much as somebody who starts in their 40s. And where you have to catch up. So if you're in your 20s, start with 10 to 15% of your income to include the match. That's fantastic. If in your 30s, you might want to be thinking about 15 to 25%, including your match. And then 40s, 25 to 35%. Because what happens, right, is the real effects of compound interest. All right. So in this case, what you're seeing is investor A starts now. Okay. And they're putting away $250 a month for 40 years. So they've only contributed $120,000, but in 40 years, right, that's going to compound and grow to something closer to like $464,000. Somebody who waits 10 years to start, right? So the person who started in their 30s versus 40s. So they try to catch up. They put away $333,000 a month. Also the same amount, the $120,000, but because you've had 10 years less of that compound interest, right, you're at $315,000 917 instead of the 464 compounded at the same rates. So that's why it's really important to start early and often, but also even if it's a little bit later, you do want to be amping up how much you're putting away in your retirement. I think this is sort of the same pieces, so I don't necessarily need to, pick this through a little bit more. But basically, right, it's an example again of somebody who's starting at 25 at 4% each year versus 4% each year, and they're increasing at 1% each year. Right. So that's the other piece we always like to recommend, especially when you're younger, is, with your raises, take 1% each year, use an auto, increase. So that way, then all of a sudden you're contributing 15, 20%, and it's no problem because you kind of never use that in your lifestyle. You use your increases towards that because it makes a huge difference in your end amount for retirement. And I always like to joke, nobody's ever really ever complained about having too much in retirement, right? We just start talking about estate planning and legacy goals as a result. So that's a good problem to have, or tax strategies. So those are good problems to have. Awesome. Okay, so often many people ask me, right? Like I get on the phone with hundreds of participants a year, and they're always like, how am I doing? Like, am I doing okay? Like, am I on track? And I'm like, well, one, it's very personalized. So let's make a, high level blueprint or, plan for you. But two, if you were just to meet me at a bar and we're supposed to talk about this, well, these are at the highest level, the goals to think about. When you're 30, you want about 1 time the multiple of your income because basically the whole thought at the highest level, and again, right, this is why it needs to be personalized, is you're trying to replace your income, right? You're trying to be able to maintain the same lifestyle you're living while you were working. And sometimes you need a little bit more because people are like, I want to travel, I want to do other things, right? But often that's usually like the base fundamental point. So 1 time your income at 30, 3 times at 40, 4 times at 45, 6 at 50, etc. So these are, again, broad brush, high level, but these are the goals for how much we're thinking would be most ideal for you to have saved to know whether you're on track. But again, to get a personalized one, we're happy to help with that. And, this is the other thing that we look at and you can think about too, right? Is assuming a 6% rate of return, which is, pretty reasonable and pretty conservative, depending on when you start, right? And how much you need is how much you're going to need to put away each month in order to reach that, right? So if you need $2 million and you're getting a 6% return and you're 30 years old, well, let's put away $1,404 a month. If you need $500,000, then let's put $351 away, right? So again, that's why it's back to thinking about, okay, what does that look like? Does it, if you don't know any different right now, then you could be like, okay, let's just replace my income. So then you can say, okay, to replace my income, at 10 times the amount, I need, $2 million. I don't know, right? Whatever the number is for you individually. So then you can back into like, how much of my paycheck do I need to make sure I'm putting away? So those are some ways to do it if you're going to do it yourself on your own, just to be thinking about, are you tracking towards it and where you want it to be? But again, it is also very personalized. And so, that future state doesn't need to be such a broad brush, and we can get very specific for people as well. So I spoke to this, and I think it's important to emphasize, right? Longevity is sometimes the biggest risk to people's plan. Not planning far out enough. Like I have clients or participants who are like, I'm probably going to live till like I'm 75. Well, guess what? 90% of couples, at least one of them lived to 85. So if you've only planned to 75 and you planned only 10 years of retirement between 65 to 75, what are you going to do from 75 to 85 or 95 or 90, right? Because as you see here, like almost half of the couples, at least one of them, have lived to 95. So usually when we're doing retirement planning, we do want to look at all the way out to 95. Are you able to fund the lifestyle that you're thinking of? Because even right now, as you see, right, the average life expectancy of men is 82 and of women is 84 and a half, which if you're retired at 65, that's 20 years to fund. So I think it's one of the biggest pieces to make sure that you're also thinking about the longevity of your plan. And then the other pieces too is to think about what are the different aspects that are going to fund the plan, right? So some of it is your retirement plan itself, some of it is money that you're earning, some of it is your own personal savings, and some of it is Social Security. And I think that even with your work earnings and your retirement plans, it's really important to think about, not a bad problem to have, but again, if all you have is like 2 million of pre-tax money, remember that 2 million of pre-tax money is going to get taxed, right? So it's going to be taxed at income tax. So maybe it'd be great if you had like 1.5 million of pre-tax money and 500,000 of Roth money, right? Because that Roth money now won't be taxed and it's going to grow tax free. Or even have a little bit of what's called taxable money to use in retirement, because then maybe you can use some of your pre-tax money and convert it to Roth upon retirement. So I always like to, I having gone to a big college football school, like I think you guys are too, right? I always like to use the analogy of a really great football team, right? Isn't just really good at run plays. They don't win national championship just because you have really great running backs only, right? You want to be able to pass, you want to have good defense, you want to have good special teams. And so that's part of the thing to also think about for your retirement planning is you don't ideally only want one play, right? So how do you get yourself to a place where you actually have the ability to have more strategies and think about tax strategies, et cetera, in retirement and legacy strategies in retirement so that it's not just a run play only. Now, run play only can work. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, right? Definitely has worked for some football teams. But just to say, if you want to have, more flexibility, more options because somebody shut down the run play, right? It's helpful to have, a lot of different types of accounts and things to pull from and strategies to pull from come, time for withdrawals and retirement. So Social Security. This is always a topic that it's almost like we could do an hour-long discussion about Social Security and Medicare alone, but I figured we would just spend a little bit of time on it because everybody's always like, when is it the best time to take Social Security? Because there's so many options. Like I can start at 62, I can wait till 70. Like, is it best to wait because it's like so much more money? Or should I just start at 62 because it's like, I don't know how long I'm going to live? Well, one, that's why a plan is helpful, right? So like how much of the Social Security is important to your retirement plan? How much does it prevent from drawing down from your own funds, right? Is things to think about, right? Two, longevity is a real thing to think about, right? So looking at your family's lifespan, nobody can guess how long they're living, which was kind of the point I made earlier. So it's kind of not trying to like make you guys confused, but you do want to think about like, hey, I really think I'm going to live to like 95 or 100. Like I'm pretty healthy. Like this is the trajectory of my family. Well, then maybe it's worth waiting, right? Maybe it's worth waiting to 70 to get that higher amount because if you're going to live to 100, well, you might as well get that higher amount for 30 years. But if you're like, it's going to be amazing if I make it to 80, 85. Okay, well, then maybe you want to take it a little earlier, right? Because if you only get Social Security for 10, 15 years, that's not as great as having it still for 20 years, even if it's a lower amount. So those are some of the impacts of thinking about it, right? Because each year you wait, the more Social Security you'll have. Also, the other thing I also like to remind people to factor in is I think that a lot of people think of retirement sometimes as like falling off a cliff. I like to joke, right? Like it's like you work, you work, you work, and like retirement is so scary to me because it means like there's no more work and I just have to stop working. Like timeout, now you're on timeout, no more working. That doesn't need to be the case, right? So sometimes retirement might just mean a transition, right? It might just mean a transition to doing something that you've always wanted to explore and do, and you might get paid for doing it. Well, if that's the case, you might get paid for doing it, then you probably want to wait to take Social Security until full retirement age, right? Because you don't want a situation where you've now chosen to take a lower amount of Social Security, it's frozen, or you have to pay some of it back. I mean, and now you won't get it again until your full retirement age. So those are some of the factors to think about on, when to take Social Security. Again, it's so personalized, it's so individualized. It also goes back again, sort of that vision for retirement, right? Vision for that transition. And also just understanding a little bit about what you can guess at your longevity. Of course, nobody can truly know. If we knew that, we probably wouldn't even, be here to talk about future planning because we'd know our future. So, yeah, you can't really predict that, but those are some of the things to think about when you're thinking about, when to take Social Security. Okay, so the the other piece to think about then, right? So I talked about the different vehicles, right? Like whether you're using your work earnings and putting it in taxable accounts, Roth accounts, pre-tax money, et cetera, is then your allocations and how you're invested, right? So I know that, everybody has a very different risk tolerance, and everybody, especially as you get older, most people start to feel like I should really hold on to more cash. I always like to start there. And especially, these last few years, interest rates have been so high, and people are like, oh my gosh, like I'm earning like 4.5% on my cash. Like, why don't I just do that? Well, cash doesn't keep up with inflation, right? So this day and age, right, especially now our inflation reports just came out. I think the last one was like 3.8 percent for inflation, right? It's going to eat away at that dollar, right? So that $1 now cannot purchase, the purchase power of your dollar is not the same as what it could have been what it will be 10 years from now. So if you're just holding cash, it's like, okay, I've made it. I got to my $2 million in retirement. Let me just move it to cash. Well, guess what? That $2 million is getting eaten away, and your lifestyle will have to change because $2 million now is not going to be the same as $2 million later when inflation continues to grow. So it is really important to be thinking about allocations. And sure, you can be more conservative and put more bonds in your portfolio or stable value in your portfolio so that you have less of the fluctuations of stock. But really, the goal is to make sure that you can continue to fund your lifestyle and have appropriate allocation and take enough risk to make sure you don't have the risk of running out of money when you're older or just devaluing your own money, even if it's legacy money. So I always like to say, right, nobody wants to take more risk than they need to be successful. And that's why the first part of the talk is about defining successful retirement or defining a successful plan. And then you figure out how to get there by how much you need to fund that lifestyle, and then factor in what is that compound interest, what is then the asset allocations we need in order to get there. So, this is stuff we help with again all the time. We're fiduciaries. We have no reason, to say you need to be in one thing or the other. Like we don't sell any products, etc. It really is just to help provide good, solid, advice to you all as participants. And, if you're younger, aggressive by all means, right? I always like to talk about, the 4 to 5 year buckets of money. Like if it's money you need in the next 4 to 5 years, okay, you might want to be a little more conservative because nobody wants to deal with the 2008 and be retiring because those people were stressed out. Let me tell you, in 2008, if you were retiring and the market went down 40%, many people just decided to continue to work, right? And sometimes if you haven't properly allocated leading to that, right, and you were aggressive and you were planning to retire, and now all of a sudden your $1 million turned into $600,000, like that's really scary for people, right? And then they take it out and you put it in cash. Well, now we have a problem because now it's never going to come back. So we want to think about, okay, what's the money you need in the next 4 to 5 years? Let's probably think about being conservative with it, right? Nobody wants to take a gamble on that. But maybe you do. Maybe you want to be moderate. Like again, it's all going to be personalized to your risk and what you need. Now, the money you need in the next 4 to 8 or 5 to 10, okay, we really need to make sure that keeps up well with inflation, right? So you want to put a little bit more. Let's be moderate with it. Maybe you're more risky. You want to do growth with it. Any money you need 10 years out plus, like growth, or if you wanted to be aggressive with it, right? Because again, we have not seen the market lose money in 15 years, right? So eventually the market recovers. Usually it's like 5-year swings. Now nobody has a crystal ball. Legal disclaimer says I have no guarantees, so I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I'm just saying our historical research does show, right? The market recovers, but you need to make sure that the money that you're okay riding out is money, tagged more for 10 plus years out. So if it's retirement money and you're in your 30s, like by all means, please be in growth at a minimum, right? But if you're, 60, 65, and this retirement money is the main bucket of money you're going to use for retirement, okay, let's start to be thoughtful about it, right? Because we don't want you to delay retirement just because 2008 happened. So let's be thought about those allocations. Let's be thoughtful about how your plan looks, how you would withdraw, and you're not taking as much risk with that. So, I think we probably don't need to necessarily harp on this because I think this last year is a prime example of volatility in the market, right? And it's kind of wild where we're ending up right now, and everybody's like, we don't know where we're going, and nobody does. And our investment team is definitely doing a lot of research and work on it. But, economic events are real. public sentiment is real, tax changes, all of these things happened, right, for us this year. Political turmoil, natural disasters, we had fires near your guys' areas, unfortunately, and geopolitical events. And so there is so much that it can't be in your personal control, which is why it's so important to be doing the work that is in your personal control of making your plan and then allocating your investments according to that plan to know that you'll be successful in the plan. Because you cannot, let me know if you can. I would love to meet you if you can control these things right now. I mean, I guess there's some people in the country that have impacts on it, but at the end of the day, us as individuals most typically cannot actually control these things happening, you know, in the market that causes market volatility. So I know I spoke to a lot of things at a very high level. And this is kind of sort of the high level I wanted to give you guys. And really, I like to just circle back, right? Like, again, I think it's really important to be thinking about retirement. You can be 20, you can be 60. It's important to be thinking about it. Take a proactive approach. Be involved in it. At least be thinking like, hey, if I'm in my 20s, okay, I don't really want to think about it. Let me just set aside a certain amount of my paycheck, get the match and move on. But check in on it every year, right? And that's what we're here to help with. So I think, one thing I wanted to take some time to share is it's a really exciting time because and I think Carrie's going to come on and speak to it too, but we're launching this CAPTRUST at Work benefit with you all at USC. It's completely free to you guys as individuals. It's a benefit paid for by USC where we can actually help you create an individualized financial plan. You get these webinars, right? And they'll be like recorded webinars, et cetera, as much as you'd like, whatever pieces will work with your leadership team on that. You can get emails, you have a website to go to. And again, we can help you create a plan, one-on-one meetings. We can look through your allocations. We can look through any other holdings and really think about a big picture for you. So think of it as like, you've got access to a free fiduciary advisor. So make your appointments. We're here to help. We could even help you figure out the custodians, right, for USC. I know you have so many great custodians, which ones to pick, what makes sense. A lot of people like to make sure that they're tracking for retirement. We can run what's called a blueprint, or we could also do a more detailed plan if you're closer to retirement or have more complexity. These are all things that we're doing. Usually we are going to want to know a little bit of information, right, about you and your assets, et cetera, and what you need. You can also come to us with questions even outside of retirement. So, like life, so much happens in life, like you're getting married, you're having kids, you want to buy a house, you name it, like, we're here to help navigate any of that for questions with us, right? So all different people, all different pieces of advice we're able to give. And you can make your appointments starting now. You go to captrustatwork.com. Myself and another advisor, Andrew, will be on site. Sorry, I think I'm jumping to it. We'll have on-site meetings too, where you can schedule one-on-ones with us. We can help you navigate, any questions you have along any lines and within any custodian or fiduciary, because again, we're a fiduciary, so within any custodian. So if you're even like, hey, should I use Vanguard, Fidelity, TIA, whatever it is, what's the investment lineups? We're here to help with that. So please don't hesitate to schedule with us individually. Look out for the one-on-one flyers, or if our schedules aren't as flexible as you need, we have plenty of members of our team that you can schedule with at captrustatwork.com. That's what I have for today. Any questions, Julie? Anything I should add?
Thank you, Melissa. That was very informative and well presented. We do have some questions in the chat, so I'll go ahead and ask you out loud. There was a graph you showed on multiple income and ages. I think if you want to go back to that, if you can just explain that a little bit more. I think it was slide 16 or 15.
Yeah. So a lot of this is around.
So one slide before this one.
Oh, one slide. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, this one.
Thank you.
Yes. No, thank you for the question. So again, this is a very, very high level broad brush, right? Like you're going to hear some people use like the 4% rule. Like, can you live off of 4% of your investments? You're good. You can retire. This is another one of those like broad brushes. Like if somebody came up to me and asked me like, am I on track for retirement and I'm 60 years old? Well, do you have 8 times your income saved in retirement accounts? So that's what this is saying. Again, I like to emphasize this is very broad brush, very high level. Like I really recommend if you want something personalized and understand whether you're tracking to it, we can get even more detailed than some of those online calculators you see, right? At Fidelity, like there's little cars that show you things, right? We can really dig in a little bit. Like where does Social Security map into this for you? Do you have accounts outside of your retirement accounts that map in? Do you have rentals? Who knows, right? Like lots of people have a lot of different moving pieces. But in general, this slide is just saying, if I know nothing about you and you ask me if you're okay for retirement and you're 60 years old, or I would say you need 8 times your income in retirement. Or if you're 50, I would say you need 6 times your retirement in 6 times your income in retirement, 31 times. So that's what this graph is saying.
Thank you for answering that. Here's another question. This person says that financial planning can be boring. How do you start the conversation with your family?
With your family. Okay. Well, so it kind of depends, right? So I have pre-teens, and my conversations with them are very different than, say, like my parents or my husband. But I think that at the end of the day, money is like health, and I hate to put those two together, but I do, right? It impacts everybody, right? Like it's in everybody's life. It's a part of everybody's life. So even just starting a conversation about money, right, is going to start to make sense to people. And I think that if you're the main strategy person, I'm guessing maybe the person who asked the question is the person, there's usually one person in the household, right, who is the main driver or the strategy person determining the plan and trying to figure out how much they need, etc. Like even if you're that person, I do, and I'm glad you asked the question, I really do recommend you talk about it a little bit with your spouse. And maybe it starts with like, hey, what do you think life's going to look like in retirement? Like, what would you want to be doing? And how much do you think we need to spend? Like just starting even with like the basic questions before you get in, well, we need a compound interest of like 7% to double our money in 10 years. Like you might be that person. I don't know, right? But, and then you might have the spouse that's, not as, into it. I think it's always good, like even with my kids, I'm like, okay, well, how much does that cost? Like, how do you plan to get there? You get this much allowance. Like, how are you going to get there? Right. So it's a part of everybody's life. Everybody sees it daily, right? So it's not too hard to talk about money. And then I think it's just about if it's like your spouse you're trying to plan for or talking about like starting with that bigger goal first. And then it creates something to back into and maybe get more specific with. So hopefully that helped a little.
Thank you, Melissa. And I don't know if this is too specific, but the question is, this person has a Roth, a 401k, and a 401b. Should they be combined into one? And if yes, which is the best?
Yeah, that one I might suggest you make an appointment because those are not quite so Roth, right, is post-tax money that's growing tax-free. Within your 401, you may have Roth money and pre-tax money, so you won't want to put Roth money in with pre-tax money. Roth money stays with Roth money. Pre-tax money is going to stay with pre-tax money. And then some of the rolling in depends also on the plan itself, whether it accepts, right, like different types of plans into other plans. So one, I would totally suggest whoever's asking that, happy to walk through, make an appointment. But overall, I'll give you a suggestion that I think always hopefully resonates. And I think it's really important because I meet so many people that they're like, I have 10 accounts and I have one at Fidelity, one at Vanguard, one at Charles Schwab, one at Morgan Stanley, like all these places. Simple and efficient is going to get you much further, right? So remember, the risk you're taking is actually within the asset you're holding inside the custodian, less than the custodian itself, right? So if you're holding a Fidelity target date fund, you have all Fidelity funds in there, but you could hold it right outside of Fidelity, technically at Charles Schwab. Not that you would do that. I guess I'm using a really bad example, but like, let's say you do the Fidelity whatever fund, right? You could actually hold it in different accounts. So the risk is within the fund you are in, not necessarily the fact that it's all at Fidelity, right? Or that it's all at Vanguard. It's what you're actually invested in. So I recommend as much as possible to consolidate, because then that will give you the ability to better manage and monitor how you're tracking towards your goals. Because it's really hard to, across 10 different, accounts and logins and plans, to put that together to be like, am I getting, to where I need to get to? So the more simple and effective you can be, the more it will benefit you in the long run.
And Melissa, can you explain how to convert to Roth? That was one of the questions.
Oh, a Roth conversion. Yes. Okay. Well, so again, I actually really recommend you get some personal advice on Roth conversions, but how it basically works is you would pay your income tax now, right? And then you move that money into a Roth. Now, many times, depending on your income, the general advice would be if you are in the lower income tax bracket, Roth now is the way to go. All right, so contribute to a Roth. If you have pre-tax money that you want to convert to a Roth, go ahead because you're in a lower income tax bracket, or if you're younger. If you are in a higher income tax bracket, you're working and you're older, I don't know that a Roth conversion makes the most sense, right? Because you're going to pay your current income taxes on that money to move it over to a Roth. Now, if you have now retired, which I don't know, most of you all probably are still working for USC to be on this, but let's just say you're retired next year and your income tax bracket can drop because you have taxable money to use for withdrawals, etc. That is an excellent time to do Roth conversions, where you might pull out money from your IRAs or your 401k up to like the 12% tax bracket or the 22% tax bracket, convert it to a Roth, and then go from there. Roth is excellent legacy money. So, I always like to joke, nobody complains about an inheritance, even if it is an IRA. But if they inherit an IRA or 401k, they're going to have to pay their taxes on it, and they're going to have to take it out in 10 years. If they inherit a Roth, they're not going to pay taxes on it for 10 years. It's going to grow tax-free for 10 years, and then you're going to take it out in 10 years. So it's excellent legacy money. It's very efficient legacy money. So that's another reason why some people might want to convert Roth and are willing to pay a higher income tax, right? Just because you're like, this money is for my kids or my grandkids, etc. But yeah, so I mean, it's really truly as simple as like you take the money out of your pre-tax money now and you roll it into a Roth, but you pay the taxes now. So there's a lot of consideration on the tax implications, et cetera, that I would do before completing any kind of conversion like that.
Thank you, Melissa. 2 questions on Social Security. Can you confirm that you mentioned you can only take Social Security for 10 years, or is it until you die?
No, sorry. Maybe somebody misheard me. No. You decide what you take Social Security for, you get it for the rest of your life.
Got it.
I think maybe that was confusing because I said, if you take it at 70 and you only expect to live till 80, you'll only have taken it for 10 years versus if you took it at 62 and you lived to 80, you'll have had it for 18 years. So you get Social Security for the rest of your life. We're just considering your longevity. So no, yeah, once you decide when you take it, you get as long as, yeah.
Got it. And then in terms of taxes, can you confirm, are there taxes on Social Security in California? If you know the answer, and what about federal tax?
Yeah, so it is taxed. It's taxed differently. I'm unfortunately not a CPA to be able to tell you exactly how it's taxed, but there are some taxes related to it. It's not taxed quite the same as income tax. And I would want to get back to you to get you the very, very, very specifics on that. But it's taxed a little bit differently than income tax, but there is taxes, depending also on your income overall, et cetera, too.
And this person would love to know more about the retirement catch-up process and how to get that started.
Oh, well, so if you're eligible for catch-up, you just start contributing to your retirement plan for that catch-up amount, right? So if you're 55, let's just say, you can contribute $24,500 to your retirement plan and an additional $8,000. So you just take it from your paycheck, you increase your contribution. Now, if you've made over $150,000 last year, that catch-up amount needs to be Roth. So just make sure that the $8,000 catch-up is Roth money. All right, the $24,500 can be pre-tax, but the catch-up money now needs to be Roth. But all you do is you go into your custodian, you go to your contribution amounts, and you just increase your contribution to Roth or pre-tax such that you would include the catch-up amount. So if you made less than $150,000 last year, you can put in $32,500 in pre-tax. So you can just update your contribution amount such that the percent taken out of your salary gets to $32,500 at the end of the year.
Thank you,
Melissa,
Melissa.
can I help with that one real quick?
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah. So at USC, if you want to get up to your catch-up amount, you'll go ahead and go into Workday, update your contributions, and if you want to do pre-tax as much as you can, know that Workday will flip it to Roth no matter what you've elected as you meet that catch-up amount if you're a person who needs to contribute Roth. So even if you put in the full $32,500 as pre-tax and you're a person that needs to contribute the catch-up amount as Roth, Workday will flip that over for you automatically. So just a little bit on our system
Thank
with
you,
that
Carrie.
one. Thanks,
Yeah,
Melissa.
apologies. I said the custodian. That's right. You guys need to use Workday. I apologize. Thank you, Carrie, for clarifying.
Thanks, Carrie. And Carrie, while you're answering questions, here's another one for you, Carrie. Can you explain the difference between CAPTRUST and our current partners, TIAA, Vanguard, and Fidelity?
So absolutely. So while TIAA Vanguard and Fidelity can give you some advisement on your finances, they're not able to give the full picture of your advisement. So I'll give you actually a personal example. So my husband and I were talking about building an ADU and using that as some rental income. So we had priced out how much it cost to build this ADU, how much rent we'd get from it, what it cost for permits and everything else. And I went to my Fidelity advisor and said, hey, is this something we should be doing at this age? We're about this many years from retirement. And they said, oh, I don't know, because they can't look at my full financial picture, right? What I have coming in another income, if I need to take care of parents who are aging, where my money is going to be going as I age, how much Social Security I'll be getting, and whether or not a 15-year loan to put up an ADU is a good idea at our particular age. But I went and I saw Melissa. And I said, Melissa, my husband has this idea for an ADU, and I'm just not sure it's the right time in our lives to make that big of an investment because it won't pay off until this point when the loan is caught up. And she was able to give full advisement on what it meant for retirement, what it meant now, and what it would mean for our legacy funding for our children and grandchildren. So there's a story to tell you how it's a little different. And then also as a technicality, our Vanguard advisors are really only able to give educational information. And so if you really want full financial advisement, CAPTRUST is going to be the way to go.
Thank you, Carrie. Sounds like a great service, and I'm sure CAPTRUST will be really busy. On that note, does the service apply to couples if one of the spouse does not work for USC?
Yeah, I thank you, Carrie, because that's such a great example. Like we really are comprehensive in our advice and work, and we love if you want to add your family members to the meeting, because again, we're able to help with anything you want to come to us for on financial advice or thinking through anything, and it's really helpful sometimes to have the spouse who might have a different view or different information to help solve that too. So they're more than welcome to join our meetings. And sometimes we've had kids. I have had plenty of people who are like, can you just share with my kid what, whatever it is, right? So happy to help.
And do you charge for the financial advice once invested?
Once invested. So no, so the financial advice is all paid for by CAPTRUST, and the specific individual investment advice on your retirement plan is also paid for, not by CAPTRUST, excuse me, USC. USC pays CAPTRUST to provide you with individual personalized financial advice on all aspects of your financial life, and then also your 401k plan and or any of your retirement plan benefits through USC. Now, if you have outside accounts outside of USC and you want us, so we can still provide advice, like we can still say like, hey, we see these things or things to think about. But if you want us to actually implement any of the advice outside of your 401 or your retirement plans, then that's when you would be engaging us in your own individual personalized advisory service. But the overall plan, the overall advice, overall insights on anything right, is available. Implementation on your retirement plan for investments, et cetera, all part of it. It's only if there's outside that you're like, hey, I want you to help me implement, right? Like, hey, we're seeing X, Y, and Z, or I like that idea or that strategy to use, then that's a separate engagement. That
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you. Can I
What's
ask?
it? Go ahead.
Yeah, regarding that question I asked. Okay, let's say I have $100,000. So what you say, I invest with the you guys, but I want to individual stock on that one. So do you charge for that or you don't? Those are all 401. I don't care. Like, let's say, it doesn't matter $1 million, but I want to invest 100 or 200,000. What I like, the stock, those are the stock I want.
So I think I probably need to understand a little bit more. I'm not sure I'm able to fully answer. So please feel free to reach out, but I'll try to say, right, if it's because you mentioned it might be in your retirement account, like if you're wanting advice on investments in your retirement account, I can very specifically have you pull up your retirement account and tell you to do X, Y, and Z. Now, we won't tell you what stocks to buy or mutual funds or ETFs to buy outside of your retirement account, but we will give you insights and thoughts on like what you're currently holding or whatever's going on and maybe some general ideas. If you want us to actually implement those ideas and actually be doing trades for you or things like that on outside accounts, that then is separate.
And is there a limit of appointments that someone can make for the service? No. Okay, so no limit. And two more quick questions. This one might require a one-on-one. Should we prioritize 529 or retirement?
I'm really glad somebody brought up 529s. And yes, I would recommend a one-on-one for that. So that goes back to your goals and priorities and plan, right? So I don't know that you would prioritize one over the other, right? Like it's not like I wouldn't go to like full fund your 529 before you fully fund retirement. It's not like a layered thing, but I do think 529s are excellent to use if you're planning to, be paying for any education down the road or want to even leave it as legacy education for grandkids, et cetera. So to answer the priority conversation, I probably need a one-on-one, but I wouldn't only do one or the other. But I think 529s are excellent vehicles that should absolutely be taken advantage of.
Thanks, Melissa. And last question for Melissa or Carrie. What is the difference between CAPTRUST and Next Level, and can we use both?
I'll take that one. So Next Level Planning offers Medicare, COBRA, and Covered California brokerage services. So they are the people that can help you plan your healthcare after USC. And then CAPTRUST helps you with your financial planning. So how you're going to pay for all that healthcare as well as the rest of your life. And absolutely, please use both. We bring in a variety of resources to retirement and administration to meet all of your retirement needs, from healthcare planning to financial planning, and so on.
Thank you, Carrie. And I'll turn it over to you to talk about all our financial wellness resources available.
Yes, well, we're bringing them on all of the time here. My name is Carrie Marroquin. I'm the manager of retirement administration here at USC, and we are bringing in a variety of resources, as you've heard. So we do have one-on-one retirement planning advisement with all of our vendors here, as well as CAPTRUST that is included in the PowerPoint that Melissa went over. So please feel free to schedule an appointment. We have both virtual and on-site appointments. We're in the University Gardens building, and we have our advisors come into our office so that you're able to speak with them. And then if you need help with Workday or any other calculations, a person from retirement is there to assist as well. We also have, if you're thinking about leaving USC or you want to learn more about your USC benefits, you're able to meet with one of our retirement planning specialists. Many of them are attending today in the comments. Fantastic people. They know our plans inside and out. They can help you calculate your catch-up, your super catch-up, and even just your general contributions if you're not quite the age for catch-up yet. So they are available. We typically have appointments available within a day or two of scheduling them. We also have the USC Credit Union, which is our own USC Credit Union that has everything a credit union does, from accounts to IRAs to car loans to house notes. They can do everything over there.
Great. Thank you so much, Carrie. Lots of great resources I encourage you all to take advantage of. And in our last few seconds together, just want to remind you all to please fill out the evaluation form. Your feedback is really important to us as we plan for future financial wellness webinars and programming for all of you. And we will now hold our raffle. So hopefully you've all entered, and we will spin the wheel and pick our lucky raffle winner. So thank you everyone for being here. And if you are the winner, Suzanne will be reaching out to you to coordinate delivery of your gift card. So thank you everyone for entering, and let's see who our lucky raffle winner is. Amy Korn, congratulations. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time. Carrie,
Thank
Melissa,
you.
Jeff, Jana, please stay on. Thank you all. That was fantastic.